It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello, and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And today we are discussing The Membranes by Ji Dawei. Would you like to attempt the plot, or shall I?
Okay, so I'll try.
All right.
So Momo is in a far future Taiwan, which is underwater, because basically all of human society has to be underwater now, not because of global warming, but because of the deadly sun rays. Momo is a dermal technician, which is an incredibly high status job, because skin is suddenly very important, and she has a very conflicted relationship with her mother, and serious intimacy issues. And over the course of the novel, we dig into why she has these things and what on earth is going on. The thing is that it's hard to do much more without spoilers.
Yes, no, the spoilers are kind of important to avoid in this one.
We can talk about the ways in which this book is very much of its moment. I believe it is from the mid-90s.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever read a book that is more specifically from the mid-90s than this book.
I mean, there was the Dyke and the Dybbuk.
Yeah, but even that didn't have like the specificity of what the global tech discourse was at this very distinct moment in time.
So, are there wizards?
Arguably.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. Kind of.
What's her name? Draupadi feels like a wizard to me.
Yeah, I would say so. There are certainly scary people doing things to you and that are beyond your control or understanding.
Yes, with, a great deal of power.
With technology that is indistinguishable from magic.
Yes. Are there lesbians?
To the extent that that Momo has a sexuality, it is certainly directed at another girl at one point.
Also, her mom is a lesbian.
Yes, her mom is definitely a lesbian. And yes, the wizards and the lesbians are in cahoots.
And also conflict.
Yes. Why should you read this book?
Well, despite it being a snapshot of a moment, I feel like there's some themes in here which still feel very relevant today.
I mean, you were talking about how, which book was it that ended up being like laser targeted at you in a way that was like,
Several, honestly.
It's been several for both of us. This one is laser targeted at me, for reasons that I'm not entirely comfortable getting into over the course of this episode.
We will see. We will navigate it as best we can. And of course, you're the one who edits the episode, so.
Right. But in addition to everything else, this is a book which, I mean, and actually that's possibly more of a reason not to read it than a reason to read it. So I don't know why I'm mentioning it here. But this book is very short. You can read it in a morning, and I think that you will want to read it in the morning. It's fascinating. It is a real time capsule. It will make you remember things, or it will give you a sort of a vision of things that were as they were before you were born, depending on how old you are. And it's beautifully written and very, very weird.
It's well translated, and we should all support, and I say this with absolutely no ulterior motives, but we should all support the buying of and publication of university press books translating fiction from East Asian languages into English.
Yes, I agree. For all sorts of reasons, not just, not just...
I should say in the spirit of full disclosure that I know the acquiring editor who worked on this book and, consider her a positive professional acquaintance.
Right. But be that as it may, for a number of reasons, this book feels like it... still it has a sort of vibrant currency that makes me wonder if, like, did the person who made this thing that I know read this book? Did the person who made this thing read this book? Did Isabel Fall read this book? And questions on that nature. So I think that, like, regardless of any sort of specialist interest, it's fascinating and worth a read.
Yes, though I'll note, I don't know how many people would have read this book because I believe the English translation wasn't published until 2021.
Yes, so that rules out some of the folks that I'm thinking of. But, but there is definitely a sort of a current of transgender or transgender adjacent cyberpunk that runs through this book, that runs through a number of other things that I've read and experienced, in a way which suggests that it occurs naturally from the ideas presented if the author is that way inclined.
Yeah, and I would say that even if you can't actually trace a direct line of influence from this book, then it certainly feels in some ways prescient in the way, like it with the if you took out or changed the things that are very much of 1995, 1996, it reads like something that, could be published today in terms of what it's engaged with. Anyway, it's good. That's why you should read it.
Indeed.
Why shouldn't you read it?
It has the potential to be very distressing.
It really does.
It's a very sad book.
It is. Honestly, I feel like this one's it's going to be in the running for a Divine Endurance Award.
Yeah, and the particular way in which it is sad also means that if you have any of a number of a wide variety of childhood traumas, that they might be triggered by this one.
And in fact, you may find this useful for processing, or you may find this triggering, but just be warned.
Yes, even though it is a very short book and it's very easy to read, maybe don't embark on it too lightly, particularly because the first maybe quarter of it will give you the sense of something that might even be kind of cozy and light in a sort of city pop kind of a way.
It does. It lures you in.
And it does not turn out to be that.
Right. And it lures you in with this very chatty tone, which I think is both the original and the translator did a great job. This is very well translated.
Yes, indeed. I would say that the author even sort of plays dumb, and then only lets you know,
yes,
kind of in layers, that there's something else going on underneath that.
Yeah.
Any other why shouldn't use?
Well, I guess let's get into the content warnings.
Oh, the content warnings. Children exhibiting sexual behavior, child molestation,
cannibalism.
Cannibalism. Let's hit the cannibalism bell. Am I going to have to do a cannibalism specific noise that I put into episodes from here on when there's
yes.
And what noise should that possibly be? I'll have to think about this.
Either that or a very brief cannibalism themed jingle, like the Hong Lo Mong one.
I've been kind of stuck on this, partially because it's difficult to improve on what already exists. Take this tune by Tom Lehrer, for example. I hold your hand in mine, dear, I press it to my lips. I take a healthy bite from your dainty fingertips. My joy would be complete, dear, if you were only here. But still I keep your hand as a precious souvenir. Now, Tom Lehrer's English contemporaries Flanders and Swan also have a cannibalism song called The Reluctant Cannibal. That one's racist. And also, Flanders and Swan are most famous for a prolonged rape joke, as Alexis pointed out to me many years ago. Really, this is one of those cases where you can be proud to be an American. Our piano-based musical comedians from the 50s and 60s were slightly more woke and significantly better. Where was I? I needed to write a song about cannibalism. I'll get back to it.
So there's messing around with people's perception of reality. There's all manner of exposing children to sexual content. Children exposing themselves to sexual content. There's flat out murder.
Yeah.
There's organ harvesting.
Unreality, body horror,
Yeah.
there's no shortage of upsetting things. A strangely visceral description of a dog giving birth.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But yeah, no, I think that gives you a general idea of what you're going into with this one. Unreality is a big one.
Yeah.
So if that's a potential problem for you, maybe avoid this one.
Yeah. All right. Shall we?
Yes, let's do it. Oh, you are my breakfast and you are my lunch and you'll be my dinner tonight. No, I don't think so. Spoiler zone.
All right. So the membranes.
The membranes. So in addition to being like a book about like information and a sort of cyberpunk idea exploration and all of the other stuff, this is also a book about being a pervert. And the titular membranes are
Well, there's a lot of membranes, but
there's a lot of membranes in this book. It's like we've chosen a theme, and I'm going to make it the title. But it's all about like barriers between your perception and the outside world, and a big part of this is barriers between your perception of the outside world if you are an autistic child. But another one of it is like, ooh, we are very into textures and skins and sensations and like materials.
right. I think that one of the things, I mean, the membranes works really well, I think, as a core metaphor here, because it is about both dampening about all the things that dampen your perceptions, and of course all the ways of like seeking out sensation, and also the way that having that like interfering medium really does make you more sensation seeking in certain ways.
Absolutely.
Partly because I think it's about getting control over your sensory input, which is something that Momo cares a lot about.
Yeah, and that's and I think that it is really sort of intentionally framing that in a sexual way. Obviously, there's a lot of sex, a lot of very sort of uncomfortable sexual stuff in this book.
Yeah.
But
it's really uncomfortable sexual stuff.
It's about sort of mediating and reclaiming your own experience part as a disabled person in part. In a way
trying to,
or the ways in which you can do that, both through like sexually acting out and through self-harm. And it's an interesting sort of motif to go along with the more general, like, what is reality? What is my experience being mediated? Sort of cyberpunk tropes that are also taking place here. Because a lot of cyberpunk books that think about that kind of thing seem to me to be thinking mostly in terms of like, okay, what is this technology? Or even beyond that, like, all right, so does this technology give us some epistemological problems, like, or do we have to ask ourselves what reality is? But this, I think the strength of this and what makes it sort of almost a deeper dive into that subject is that it really focuses on what the real life problem of being a person with what society considers to be sensation issues of one kind or another, processing disorders, sensitivity, hypersensitivity, lack of sensitivity, and of course one leads to the other,
right.
And like what that feels like for that person as part of the whole technological metaphor.
And I think also one of the things that the ways in which I feel like this in some ways improves on a lot of classic cyberpunk is that when it's digging into the how much can technology invade our body and brain while we're still human, but like Momo's fundamental humanity isn't denied. It's the ways that what everybody else is doing to her that the novel makes it very clear that she is being dehumanized by society, as opposed to, and even as she's being like robbed of her body and control over her own sensory perceptions. But that is, not a statement on her. It is a statement on, both her society and her mother.
Yeah. And like as a metaphor, it doesn't depend on all of the magic and technology at all,
Right.
It's like you tell me my mother wrote a story about who I am and is drip feeding it to me,
Right.
My mother has a script that she uses to interact with me, and there are blank parts from my responses, but they don't change her responses.
Right. And while at the same time showing the ways that, this gets fed to Momo, and she's still trying to shape it into her own narrative.
Of course.
And so that when it finally reaches the point, and I mean, this is where it becomes overwhelmingly sad, is that she finally does it, and her mother's response is to go, oh, well, now that I've got her free from the military-industrial complex, it would just be too hard on her to let her, have real sensory perceptions. It's so much easier to keep her brain in a box and keep feeding her everything forever and ever and ever, so that I can continue to shape her entire reality around me.
It's like crushing. It's crushing and it's heartbreaking. And it really is like, both the metaphor of like the overbearing mother aside, like the sheer
she's just such a good autism mom.
I mean, yes. And it's like I don't know if this works in translation, but there's this whole thing about how the military industrial complex corporation that uses autistic brains for its own ends, which is STEM essentially, or
right.
The military.
Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, Lockheed Martin. The part of our culture and society that funnels people with this kind of neurodivergence into areas where their particular abilities can cause the most harm to the world.
Mm-hmm.
That corporation is called ISM in this one, and one of the ways in which this is significant and sort of gives it an air of power is that it is trading on all of these isms. And in the accompanying essay, you're gonna have to remind me of the
Ari Heinrich
mentions that Taiwan at the time is because it's just come out of its dictatorship and isolation, is being deluged with all of these ideas and isms from the outside world.
To be fair, that was several years ago. That was the late 80s, and now we're in the mid 90s. But yes.
Sure, but this
is part of the big flowering of opening up of culture and the intellectual world that happens with the lifting of martial law.
Yes, I was persuaded by the essay that the book is in part, displaying that kind of like sensory overload, almost this deluge of art and ideas from the rest of the world, including the my absolute favorite, like mind-boggling detail that I think comes from G. Dawei himself, that students were earnestly reading Judith Butler as science fiction. Just incredible. But anyway, the organization is called ISM, and the ism, and there's a huge list of isms that is mentioned, but the one ism that is not in the list, and I don't know if this would work in the original, but it certainly works in the text as it is autism. And autism is just such a huge central theme of the book, while not being acknowledged by name at any point,
Yeah.
But nowhere less so than in this sort of, I mean, the scripting comes from mom, but the scripting also comes from society. It comes from like, what can we do with this person?
Right. Well, and I mean, part of the thing is that mom has made herself part of society. I mean, she is the face of like basically Wikipedia, subscription Wikipedia.
Well, you mean Microsoft Encarta?
Well, I mean, in its era, it's Microsoft Encarta. But the thing is that there still is, sort of this ubiquitous thing that everybody goes and looks stuff up on. It's just now it's one of the few things that's managed to stay free and crowdsourced. And the sort of great enshittification. But yes, no, I mean, also, I mean, this is so dumb, but the fact that she works for Microsoft's competitor, Mega Hard,
Yeah.
which has
yeah,
managed
no.
to outcompete Microsoft because it has a more manly name, which I loved that detail.
Yes, but it has also outcompeted Microsoft by out encyclopediaing it.
Right.
Which is like this brief moment in time. Again, like this book is incredibly mid-90s, where it was
right.
like, where
God, I'd honestly forgotten about Encarta. I was still imagining like the World Book. You can tell that my family didn't really have a computer during the key Encarta era.
yes, no, this is like I was in elementary school, the like elementary and middle school during this time, and it was like this is the only time in I think that like maybe for 2 or 3 years you could potentially think that like books and multimedia things distributed on CD-ROM might be the wave of the future for all media. Like,
right.
This only that idea only lasted for a few years, but it was during that time that this book was written.
Right. Now, let's be fair. This book has recognized that the CD-ROM has limitations, and clearly these would be using laser discs.
We're putting all the culture on a laser disc. Everything's better on a laser disc. Whatever happened to the laser disc? Can we watch seminal Italian gross out films like Cannibal Holocaust on a laser disc? I don't think that works now. Yes. I kept imagining like the full laser disc. Like in the
presumably by this point they've miniaturized them, but that's honestly one of the ways that you can tell that this comes from East Asia. The laser disc never really took hold here.
It's a shame. They're so beautiful. These giant golden LPs.
Personally, I've always preferred the RCA video disc on vinyl.
Of course.
As far as like technology that never quite had its moment goes. Sorry, we're drifting off topic.
We are, but there is this sort of like it is a fascinating experience to have this like crushingly sad and, at least to me personally, like really relevant story happening at the same time as I remember Microsoft Encarta and CD-ROMs
right.
and all of that, and but of course that also makes it more poignant because I was a child during this milieu,
right?
So hey, it slots in all the easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, like, there's so many different ways in which this book is queer. I mean, obviously, like, Mama's a lesbian. Just the way that, Momo's friendship with her android companion, where, like, her mom just gets increasingly weird about it, is very much, I think, the experience of a parent slowly beginning to suspect that your, one's relationship with one's best friend might not actually be the, platonic relationship that's, safe. And, but, doesn't want to bring it up yet. So they're just going to get increasingly weird about it.
Yeah. So they just have a quiet word with the other kid's parent and they end up moving to a different state. Anyway, but however far-fetched this metaphor involving a sickly child and the sickly child who is not yet a girl, because the gender reassignment here, even though it doesn't seem to cause Momo any problems, is also coming from the parent because they wanted a girl.
Yes.
Incidentally to all of this.
That's true. There's like two possible trans readings of Momo. One is that, because like the more obvious one in the narrative is that Momo is a trans woman. She's born in this body that has a penis. She is, is transferred into actually she thinks she's transferred into a female body, but she is not. And so, but, and she has this like female sense of self, but as we've established, at this point, she's a brain in a box, and her entire reality is a combination of what the, military manufacturer wants her to believe so that they can get her to do these things, build their war machines, but also what her mother wants her to believe. And her mother, as you just said, wanted a girl. And so how much of her, is she a trans woman, or is there also a reading where she could actually, be a trans man who hasn't had a chance to, who's never had a chance to figure out her actual gender?
I mean, yes, and in addition to all of those things, what she is a brain in the box, and that's a gender identity all of its own.
It's true. Well, she certainly doesn't have a body.
And a gender identity that may be familiar to autistic people also,
Yes. I mean, to be fair to her, in her memory, she always all of her memories are she always wanted to get rid of her penis. But again, we don't know how much of her, we don't know we know that her reality after a certain point is completely being, governed by other people's inputs, but we don't know how much even of her memory is being untouched.
Well, we are given the sense that if she can trust anything about what she remembers, it is her time in the hospital.
Yeah.
And it is in the hospital that she has that she invites her best friend / true love, because she has that sort of, again, I don't want to,
/ android clone who's going to be massacred for her parts.
Yes, who's supposed to be her body, but then that doesn't work out. It's such a wide variety of fucked up metaphors for the kid you brought me to be my friend, because I was too weird to make a friend on my own. And I don't want to, to lay everything at the foot of an ISM, but I can tell you that fixating on that person in a really complete way is something that can happen if that happens. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she invites. She wants to eat a part of her friend. Again, familiar sort of misapprehension of libidinous feelings at a young age. And so she bites off her android friend's finger, and that goes fine. She's like, why don't you bite off my penis? I don't really want it.
Right. That goes less fine because she's not an android.
Yes. Without it, no diet is truly complete. For oft it is said that you are what you eat. Have a snack of your neighbor. Okay. Now I've just poured an entire bucket of psychosexual imagery, on the floor here.
Right.
Make of that what you will. But I think that, to me at least, it makes a kind of intuitive sense, the whole thing. But even if it doesn't make that kind of intuitive sense to a person who has not had my experiences, the sort of that does feel to me genuinely that a lot of what makes Momo a person, that a lot of what makes her distinct from the scripts that her mom is writing her are present in just how fucking bizarre this thing is.
Yeah, no, that's true. That really suggests, and plus the fact that her mom is clearly just really annoyed about the whole thing.
Yeah. So
you're right. I think that suggests those memories are, if anything is true, it's those memories.
Yeah, and again, to circle back to this book being about perversion, it's well, yes, this is, God knows what else about me is, mediated from without by various other, societal or mental or, top-down influences, but none of them seem to want me to be this, and yet I am this. And it is sort of telling how her parent, the scripts that her mother has fed her, keep going off in weird directions, including the tableau with her inviting this dude to molest her in the park, which is mom clearly didn't expect that to be the end result of this scripting, but it's telling to me that she through this scene where she is basically plays the Lolita, if you will, and invites this dude to touch her. She finds out something very important about her herself in her past, or at least, what we think up until that point is herself in her past.
Right, because that's where she learns about androids being murdered for androids being specifically grown to be spare parts for a specific person.
Right, because the person who touches her, and in actually kind of an innocent sort of way, because he is also like 5 days old at that point, is an android that a gay landscaper has had made so that he won't be fat anymore and can therefore get more
landscaper.
lovers.
So there's a fun thing in this book, which is clearly it's taking all of these very low class service jobs and making them and explaining why in this society they would naturally be like these high class celebrity jobs. So the dermal technician, which is obvious, which is
beautician,
right, like a beautician. Like normally the spa lady or whatever. Not that I actually know what goes on in spas, but like normally the person who's taking care, who's giving you skin treatments and a massage is not, a highly sought after national celebrity, winning, contests, winning like globally regional contests, for the entire Southeast Asia region or whatever. But because the hole in the ozone layer has ruined everybody's skin, even underwater. So that, skin has become so high status that somebody who can make your skin beautiful is, considered the equivalent of a brand name designer. And similarly, plants are so rare now that the landscaper, which is like, these are all jobs that, of course, in the U.S. are performed by immigrants. Mm-hmm. And that, and so I think like this novel is, I think, very deliberately, because it also suggests that, suddenly Black people who are, at least according to this novel, more proof against sun damage, are suddenly like the highest status, most beautiful people in the world. Everybody agrees. There are now race riots in Los Angeles led by white people because they feel like they're being oppressed for their skin color.
I have to tell you that I interpreted that stuff in the world building as satire on
it absolutely
building,
is,
like, and satire on particularly on the kind of books that invent things that happen in the East based on an extremely incomplete understanding. And I mentioned that because at first I was like, because I didn't know what was in store. I was like, is this just a kind of a naive, sort of silly understanding of, particularly when it's like the Christian church immediately became, it was like all blacks in the Christian church. Because
but then the next paragraph, it mentions Christians of all races. So like, clearly
it's being silly. And I didn't, and like, but I like how the author sort of tips us off slowly to how silly, to the self-awareness around the silliness.
Right. But and part of this is that, it's like, we introduce a landscaper. By the way, says the book, which has not mentioned this before, landscaping, incredibly lucrative and high prestige profession. Let's start talking about all of the ways that, this aging gay landscaper is making a fool of himself.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it works like in narrative too, because her mother was working class before she became the face of macro hard or mega hard, and is sort of, in one of maybe, I mean, in what's like, is instilling in her daughter this sort of idea of like the power of the importance of these sort of once laboring roles, although and we don't really know how much of it is true and what and how much of it isn't, because all of the world building that we get is from inside this bubble that Momo's mom has created.
Right, except for, again, the stuff in the hospital when Momo's in the hospital and doesn't get to see anything in the outside world.
We only know the only real thing we know is the hospital and the military installation where Momo is actually working on repairing, attack droids.
Yes. So actually, not to make everything about Utena, but like I think that the narrative voice of this book is sort of doing a similar thing to the narrative voice of like it's doing actually kind of a similar thing that Utena is doing with pacing, where it starts out with this very sort of childish, here's a fairy tale, but was that really such a good idea? And then and then as it slowly unfolds, you start to realize that stuff is increasingly fucked up. The only difference being, again, Momo never escapes the academy.
Yeah, I will say that I was, since you broke the seal on Utena, I will say that I was also thinking about Deltarune, which is my current pop culture fixation. In the specific thing about how like it follows the same pattern where it starts off very childlike and then ramifies on the implications of the ideas until it's in horror territory, but also specifically in the sort of scripted your choices don't actually matter because the script is the script thing, in relation to being a traumatized child.
Yeah, and like
is a similarity.
And this is definitely one of those things that I think is often done poorly, but when done well is very effective. And I think part of the thing that tends to make it effective when done well is when it is doing this very much using the frameworks of the genre that it's talking to. And so that's where all of this sort of seemingly silly, naive world building works really well, because you go, oh, I guess this is just, kind of not very good, very naive, as you said, cyberpunk. And so, like, because you've got to really make it work. You have to, I think, be engaging enough with the tropes that you're, at least straightforwardly presenting yourself as, to actually lure the reader or watcher or player in. And because it only really works if you're not forewarned.
Precisely.
So
I think that the moment that I twigged, that I was like, oh, there's something nasty and really smart going on here, was when the book says all of the most important things on Earth except the very, very like large and difficult to move cultural treasures were moved underwater. Like the only things remaining on the surface, the Great Pyramids and the February 28th incident memorial plaques.
All of the 228 memorial plaques.
228 memorial plaques.
Right.
I was like, oh, I see.
Okay, we're doing something else given
here.
This, and actually, given the era that this is written in, that's somewhat prescient, because boy, there's a lot more now. Actually, the 228 memorial that's in Taipei is really quite good. I recommend it just in terms of memorial design.
Yeah.
But yeah. Also, the whole all the important animals were brought down under the water. And by important plants and animals, we mean the cute and pretty ones. Obviously, we weren't going to bring the cockroaches. Those have no ecological use whatsoever.
Right, exactly. And there's also like this the flaws in the reality are like, are baked in from the beginning if you're looking for them. Mm-hmm. We've established that real dogs are incredibly rare and incredibly expensive. So who knocked up her dog? Like a stray dog got her dog pregnant,
right?
Like it's just it's just there for like the upsetting sort of dreamlike image of it,
right? Of of cutting 3 of the 6 puppies out of their membranes, speaking of Utena,
yes,
and then leaving the other 3 and being like, I'm too grossed out, I don't care, I guess they can all die. These all incredibly expensive creatures can all just die, and then dumping them all in the trash, and then coming back the next morning to find that the 3 that have been cut out of the membrane are alive, and the 3 that were left in their membranes are dead.
Yeah, because smash the world's shell.
Exactly. Yeah. Or have a Japanese celebrity journalist cut the world's shell open for you and then dump you in the trash anyway.
Yes. Yeah. No. It's like, oh, we found this kid in a peach. It's very like the peach is such a like gooey, gloopy fleshy, sensual object here, and you can absolutely see the we're immediately presented with two different versions of the story. One of which is this, both of which are kind of messianic. Like there's no father involved in either of these stories.
Right.
Like this mythical, like stray, incredibly rare male dog, or the two lesbian moms finding Momotaro in the cherry tree. I mean cherry in the peach tree. And it does have that, the specific sort of autism mom, you are a miracle, you are special, you are in fact greater and more of a treasure, precisely because of it.
Right, and I'm not going to tell you the truth of how I got you.
Right. It works on so many levels at once. It's like this book is like a series of, I don't know what the word is, like layers, like thin layers,
right,
you might
thin
say.
Layers of
thin sort of semi-permeable layers.
Mediating our perceptions.
Through which meaning can, be filtered or perceived in different ways.
Selectively.
Yeah, it's real good.
I should also note that the word for membrane is mo, in case you were wondering, in Chinese. So Momo's name is, a pun on both peaches and membranes, and also touch.
Perfect. Yeah, no, if it wasn't obvious, this is an incredibly good, dense, fascinating piece of work.
And again, I think actually, like, even the use of the membrane metaphor is another way that it lures you in, because it's just like throwing all this membrane imagery at you, and you're like,
right.
Wow, this is kind of heavy-handed.
Yeah.
It's, it's not until you figure out what the final membrane is near the end.
So you think it's going to be a story about a professional young woman feeling alienated and unreal? Maybe the prelude to a romance. And then you get to thinking it might be a story like Lane, where the alienation and the unreality are everywhere, and the girl represents you. Then it gets very specific. Yeah, and again, it's very like Utena / Deltarune in that it's all of the themes are established early and harped upon, and then you're left to slowly coagulate in it until the true significance and horror of it becomes obvious.
So, what else?
So many references to European films.
Yes, that's true.
Which is in large part because Momo's mom is a film buff.
Yes.
Or spends a lot of her free time going to the theater, and sort of seeds Momo with all of these reference. Although Momo is then free to use those references as she wants. Which
is also, I think, like a great comment on, the ways that you turn to fiction, particularly when you're an abused child.
Yeah, it's like you've been given this vocabulary of meaning by the world around you, by the art around you, and in particular by the art that your parents think is significant, because that's
right.
Always going to be the stuff that's sold to you, and that you're going to be put in the way of first. But you do end up constructing your own meaning out of those building blocks. The membranes themselves don't, if you can call them, hey, film, that's another membrane. That's another sort of little layer through which light comes through. But because the meanings that her mom assigns to these movies, we get these sort of, I mentioned this one because it was about missing your mom, about families being reunited, missing of the mother. The meaning that Momo gets out of them is like completely different. And so even as a brain in a box, your individuality is allowed to, come through just the way that she mediates these things.
Yes. And just like one of the last minute switches that this book plays on you that I really enjoy is that, you're like, okay, estranged mother. Yep. Nope. Classic bad mom, checking all the boxes. Oh, she was doing this all, cause to save her daughter. Oh, never mind. She's still going to keep her brain in a box because it would be better that way.
Because in addition to everything else, like Momo really was a deeply ill child,
Right.
A significantly severely disabled child. And, there are different ways that people react to having a severely disabled child, dropped on them when they weren't expecting it. And one of those ways, the way that Tomie, the other lesbian mom, handled it
is noping out.
Yeah. And to leave the other parent holding the bag. And one of the ways to handle it is to go kind of insane. I'm not saying those are the only two ways to handle the situation.
But those are two very common ways.
And it's like, you can certainly see why, that one would react in such a way.
Right, like you can even kind of see how she ends up signing her daughter over to Lockheed Martin for 20 years, because it's like, well, okay, I can't pay the medical bills, and right. It's great because, like, Taiwan actually has one of the best healthcare systems in the world in terms of, trading off accessibility, affordability, and quality. And even so, it's like, yeah, national insurance was a drop in the bucket here. Although I think at the time that Taiwan did not have the same level of national health care. These days, it's quite good.
I want to live in one of these model states that is right next to the enemy, so that we can show off how cool we are.
Right. Yes. I guess also in full disclosure, I spent a bunch of time living and studying in Taiwan and have a deep fondness for it. So I am somewhat biased towards Taiwanese literature. Although honestly, shout out to the Taiwanese government for funding for helping fund the translation and publication of this. For being willing to throw money behind this incredibly weird, incredibly queer book that is not like that is, among other things, poking fun at its own country and government.
Do you miss the days when government funding for arts was a matter of national pride? When we had to show off just how clever we were, when there was an alternative, it was kind of nice.
But anyway, so it almost makes sense that the mom is going to sell her daughter into 20 years of indentured servitude. But it's what she does after, you can make a case that, okay, it was that or let the kid die. She, of course, could have given the kid any degree of autonomy here, or at least information. But it's what she does after that really shows you the quality of the choice, of even the initial choice, which casts some doubt then on how inevitable was this really, which is one of the ways in which she's a fantastic, capital A autism mom. Because suddenly all of these horrible things that I've done to my child are, I had no choice.
It's very easy to, it's hard to know, and again, to be fair to the fictional autism mom, it's hard to know what the right choice would have been under the circumstances.
Right, but we don't know to what degree we don't know to what degree the medical bills were insurmountable, for example.
Right.
But the thing is that even if we're willing to concede that one, her final choice shows what kind of parent she was in the end, which I do think casts some retroactive doubt on, everything she did before that.
This is true.
And I will also note that, we've been talking a lot about the autism. This also, the brain in the box thing, especially for the 90s, also works really well as a metaphor for, how parents of queer kids force their kids to stay in the closet. Because, it's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just, it would be such a miserable life. I don't want that for you.
No, I think that there is absolutely that reading there as well. I guess another aspect of this whole thing that we haven't mentioned is espionage. Autism equals espionage.
Secret agent man. autism-coded man. They've given me a diagnosis, and now I'm off to Bletchley Park.
Oh, yes! The skin!
Yes, but more as the as in terms of like the theme of voyeurism.
Yeah.
That keeps coming up, because like one of the big deals about this is that, you know, if mother is feeding you the script, then mom's not actually telling you what's going on.
Right.
And therefore you have to, you know, it's through sort of peeping and spying that you create your own sense of the world, and which is a part of Momo's life, or fictional and imagined life from the very beginning, but also turns out to be a big part of what the state wants her for.
Right. Right. Is her ability to, you know, experience all of these, you know, vicariously experience all of these perceptions that she thinks are what her customers are, you know, have experienced. She coats her, so part of her special dermal treatment is that she coats her customers in this incredibly thin M skin, and then they don't know it, and then they come in a week later and she strips it off and gives them a new coating, and they don't know it, but that she's able to hook this up to a machine and then experience all the sensations that their skin experienced over the course of that week. And, you know, this is what's going on inside her brain box, and outside of her brain box she's translating all the data from the damaged combat androids into, you know, black box recovery data before she fixes them up and sends them back out again.
Yet another layer of the same metaphor, I suppose, but and also hooks into the sex of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so there's this interesting thing with Momo where, you know, she had this one, you know, extremely sexually charged prepubescent friendship, and then, and, you know, that is like just made it impossible for her to form any kind of sexual connection. Again, part of this is probably that she's a brain in a box, but there's the whole really weird interlude with the white girl at her school who falls in love with her.
Yes. I that felt, well, I mean, you know, there was one sort of part of me that felt this was part of this like puckish flattening of Europeans and Americans that the book was doing earlier with its sort of reverse race riot stuff. But, you know, there's always the, you know, the white girl who you meet in college who is a problem for your parents, is also a thing.
Right. I mean, it's also, I mean, the girl's name is Lola. We've already gotten this Lolita scene earlier. And like, she, you know, and she looks like a doll. And remember, Momo's other, you know, Momo's special childhood friend is quite literally a living doll. And so you have this like, oh, look, here is basically your childhood, you know, all these childhood experiences being presented to you and begging you to hold her. And she reacts with violence. I also read this as her mind, you know, her highly sort of controlled mind trying to present her with these ways, with this like connection to her pre-brain in a box time. And she's violently shoving it away because, you know, because like she's got all this childhood trauma that she cannot process.
This is true. But I'm interested in the ways that this sort of like this Arrested Development manifests in the various kind of paraphilias that she's drawn to. Right.
I mean, because also there's like the fact that she's incredible, you know, she wants absolutely nobody to touch her, but she wants to be able to touch other people. And she wants to experience how other people have been touched, but only by herself without them knowing.
Are you brain in a box? Was there a point before you were brain in a box? Did the world abound with wonder? Did you see the secret meanings? When's the last time you saw daylight without looking through the membrane? Are you a brain in a box? Would you like to eat people?
Yeah, perfect. Just a wide variety of inabilities to connect. And that AT field is
Yep.
hard. We're just gonna run the gamut. Can we get Moby Dick in here somehow? I don't think we can. This book is not very much like Moby Dick at all.
No, it's not.
But no, that is an excellent point and well made. And I didn't really know what to make of that sequence while I was reading. So I appreciate your having paid closer attention to it.
It's just it. I didn't even remember it from the first time I read it, but when I reread it, I think this is definitely, it's a short book, and I think it rewards rereading, partly because even if you do know what you're getting into going in, I still think that there's something about the voice, watching it actually unfold for yourself is going to be an experience. And then it really rewards going back and understanding that everything really was being done deliberately.
Yes, absolutely. Oh man, the sort of the way that the tone, it really starts off reading like a light novel,
It does, yeah.
It's sort of we're in kitchen, but but the katsudon is a lie.
I think you're being a little unfair to kitchen, honestly.
No, I should have picked something lighter. Kitchen. Maybe we'll do kitchen at some point.
We should do kitchen at some point.
Does anybody want to come and do kitchen with us? It's not Wizles.
Oh, we can absolutely find somebody who will do kitchen with us. But yeah, no, it reads like a light novel.
Yes.
Initially.
Until it doesn't.
Right, until it doesn't. Because it absolutely has that chatty, over-explaining tone of context dumping that that you can still get if you pick up a light novel or a web novel or something today.
Yeah, I mean, and then it does it, and then it does the whole context dumping thing again right at the end when you're getting what's really going on, but it doesn't feel light anymore.
It doesn't feel light anymore, and the tone. Again, this is some of this we're reading the translation. Boy, I wish I had time to read the original. But the tone also feels different. Yes.
No, if you ever get around to it, I would be fascinated to hear whether it brings out new observations.
Yeah, sure. Give me 10 years.
These things take time. I understand this.
And honestly, if I'm going to read something in the original, it's first going to be rereading Hong Lemong.
So 20 years and then.
Right. Okay. Do we have, notes? Other notes?
I think I managed to get through absolutely everything that I wanted to mention. Oh, one note. We may or may not have, based on whether I got what you said wrong and therefore erased the whole thing, we may or may not have mentioned that up top that the climate crisis here is the ozone layer rather than global warming.
Right.
And I think it's just funny to me that that in this book the global government, before they get back to fighting each other, manages to band together to find a solution or to create this sort of great underwater migration solution to the problem. And this is accurate. Global government did actually band together and create a solution to the ozone layer problem, because nobody's livelihood was caught up in CFCs.
Well, some people's were, but not a financially significant and politically significant contingent.
Not the oil and gas industry worth of number of people had their livelihoods bound up in it.
And this is another way in which this book is weirdly prescient, is that by the time this book came out, the hole in the ozone layer was getting better.
Yes.
But the specific way in which the government failed in this book, which is, they finally got around to regulating these emissions, but it was too little too late. And so then they decided to, I guess we're all just going to be underwater. Weirdly prescient.
Manages to really get both sides of the whole climate change thing.
Right.
Yeah. So there that, but yeah, that was the only note that I had.
The only other note I had is that this is one of those fascinating books because it's like a year before, like AIDS is still clearly a major thing that, you know, people are scared of. Like every cyberpunk before 1996 mentions AIDS, and then suddenly it just vanishes from our science fiction starting around 1997 because suddenly we hit on the drug cocktails that worked, and like almost overnight people stopped dying.
Yeah. No, it's as I said at the beginning, I'm like, and I think this is just partially because I lived through it, but like you can almost tell what year this book was written to the year. Like I am 12 and this is what the world is like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Unlike the last time that we read a book that brought back the, you know, dream of the 90s was The Dyke and the Dybbuk, and we were like, this is great. And now, so like, also points to Ji Da-wei for being like, oh yeah, actually the 90s did kind of suck.
Well, you know, it helps to be writing in the 90s to...
Well, that was also true. Well, no, that was also true of The Dyke and the Dybbuk, right? Like, we're reading two books about the 90s, and one of them manages to capture some of the fun parts, and one of them manages to capture all the ways that... one of them really manages to capture all the things that people focusing on the fun parts were doing so as an act of willful denial.
This is true. I mean, the other like 90s thing about this is that I've felt from time to time like I was listening to a vintage Momus song. I was reading this book. It has the perversion and the sort of obsession with, like, you know, this kind of city pop bubble 90s, you know, East Asian culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there.
Yep.
But anywho.
All right. I think we've
podcasted and done a relatively good job with a pretty dense text.
Yes. Definitely. But if after listening to this, you don't think that this is going to be like horribly triggering, I strongly recommend reading this book because it is good. And also, again, support your university presses.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.